Less than a century after writing "All men are created equal," the nation was deeply fractured. As it expanded, the North and South developed along completely different cultural and economic lines. While the North industrialized rapidly, the southern half of the country became economically dependent on forced labor. By the mid-19th century, 4 million enslaved men, women, and children worked the labor-intensive plantations that kept the Southern economy afloat. Thomas Jefferson had originally drafted a condemnation of slavery in the Declaration of Independence, but removed it out of fear of losing Southern support. Leaving the legal status of slavery intentionally vague at the founding practically guaranteed a future crisis. In 1819, the country was perfectly balanced, 11 free states and 11 slave states. But America kept expanding. Adding new Western territories threatened that delicate balance. Outnumbering the opposing faction meant gaining a legislative majority, forcing their own laws onto the other side. When traditional compromises failed, the tension boiled over into violence. Settlers rushed into Kansas to sway local voting and began killing each other in the streets. On the floor of the U.S. Senate, politicians began carrying weapons in self-defense. Legislative compromise had reached its absolute limit. As the old guard failed to stabilize the territories, the existing political framework began to dissolve, leaving the country without a functioning center of gravity. Abraham Lincoln did not look like a traditional power broker. He was born into poverty, conceived in a dirt floor shack in Kentucky, and was entirely self-taught. He read constantly and studied the law until he passed the bar, eventually becoming an incredibly astute lawyer. In one famous trial, a witness claimed to see the killing by a bright full moon. Lincoln pulled out an almanac, proved there was only a dim half moon that night, and systematically dismantled the man's entire testimony. He relied on hard data and tight logic. In 1854, he brought that sharp legal reasoning into the newly formed Republican Party, taking aim at the legal status of slavery. Growing up on the rugged frontier with almost nothing forced Lincoln to be a highly calculating and observant thinker. He developed the exact kind of strategic mind required to operate in a broken political system. While Lincoln carefully plotted legal arguments, others were taking direct action. A radical abolitionist named John Brown tried to dismantle slavery by force, raiding a federal armory in Virginia to incite a massive uprising. The plan failed, and Brown was executed. Lincoln chose rhetoric over armed rebellion. He famously argued that a house divided against itself cannot stand, using clear, undeniable logic to outline the crisis facing the country. Rather than demanding the immediate abolition of slavery where it already existed, Lincoln campaigned strictly to prevent its expansion into new Western territories. By containing it geographically, he calculated that the institution would naturally die out over time. This approach allowed the Republican Party to capture a broad coalition, unifying radical abolitionists with moderate voters and conservative Northerners who simply wanted to protect their own economic interests. By threading this needle, Lincoln became the most viable candidate for a party that had only existed for 6 years. When the 1860 election arrived, the geographic divide was absolute. Abraham Lincoln's name was completely absent from the ballot in 10 southern states. This chart shows how the North's rapid industrialization gave them a massive population advantage over the South. Because the Electoral College converts population into votes, the math was inevitable. Lincoln won the presidency in an electoral landslide without securing a single Southern vote. For the Southern states, the results proved they had completely lost their voice in the federal government. South Carolina immediately seceded from the Union, followed quickly by 10 other slave states. The backlash was severe. Before he even took the oath of office, active assassination plots forced the president-elect to sneak into Washington, D.C. under heavy disguise on a covert night train. By leveraging northern population centers and adhering strictly to the electoral math, Lincoln won the office without the support of a single slave state. This victory stripped away any remaining illusions of compromise, forcing a nation that had dodged the issue for 80 years to finally confront it.